everyone, welcome back. It's been a long pause. I'm your host, Jim Myers,
And I'm your co-host, Sybilla Irwin.
and we are so excited to be back on the air doing another podcast with our wonderful chat room and everyone that's been waiting for us to get back on the air. So,
Yes,
thank you for your patience. We have been on a break since what was it, December,
December.
Sybilla?
Yeah, it has been. And thank you guys so much for checking up on us too. Like there,
Yes,
so many of
yes.
you have like sent messages like, "Hey, I haven't been able to find you. Where are you guys? And when are we going to see you?" And thank you so much. We love you
Yeah.
guys.
We do, and thank you for persevering and just to for those who maybe are new to our podcast. The previous podcast was called the Sasquatch Outpost podcast, and we did that through the Untold Radio Network, and we took a break for a couple of reasons. One, I needed time to work and finish the Sasquatch, the Deep Woods Sasquatch escape room that we're building and or we're getting close to finishing now. And I just needed to focus on that. But we also, Sybilla and I wanted to kind of do our own thing. And there's certain constraints when you're with a network about what the way that the podcast looks, the way you run it and things. And we just decided we wanted to kind of do our own thing.
Mhm.
So so we're doing our own thing.
So here we are.
And here we are. And we're both excited. We've both missed this very much and missed having all of you uh, keeping up. And I know that for many of you, this was your contact with kind of the Bigfoot community was our podcast, and so we can appreciate that. And we don't know how often we will drop a video, maybe twice a month, something like
Yeah,
that,
or more.
or more.
Yeah.
Um, but because we're doing pre-recorded and not live, it's we can drop them whenever we want. And the reason we're moving away from the live is just so that we have a little bit more freedom to change things, edit things
Mhm.
afterwards. There's not the pressure. If you've been with us for a while, you've seen some of the
Mhm.
technical snafus we've had in the past when something didn't work and you're wondering, is this podcast coming on tonight or not? And and today was no exception. We've been working for what,
An hour.
an hour trying to get this thing to work out right.
Get our
So
guest in the green room.
yeah, our guest has been very, very patient.
Yeah,
So
he's fantastic, and you guys are going to love our guest. He's
this is
fantastic.
an incredible, incredible story that we've got for you tonight.
Yeah.
So, um, but just to let you know, the escape room we're due to open. If you're living in Colorado or if you're coming to Colorado at all this summer, we're due to open probably somewhere the end of the first week of June to maybe mid-June. We wanted to get open before that, but it's there's just a lot of technical things involved in doing an escape room. Having never done one, this is all new to me, and we're my technical and design partner who's doing this with me is in Sacramento, so he has to fly over, and we have to take all the puzzles that he's building. I'm building the event. He's building the puzzles. Trust me, the puzzles are probably harder than the event building,
Wow.
but we're probably 75% to being able to be open. And
That's awesome.
we're very excited. And so that's just to explain why we've had this long pause. But Sybilla, just why don't you tell everyone a little bit about what you and I want to maybe do differently in this podcast than we were doing in the past.
Well, I think because you're not live, I think everybody can be more relaxed.
Hmm.
And I mean, I think that's just been what I've discovered with my cast. Everybody's more relaxed. There's not so much of a focus on the entertainment value.
Hmm.
I mean, when people are telling and sharing their stories, I think that's for me the whole purpose is
Yeah.
that this person having a platform to share their encounter, not so much about trying to entertain people. The people that watch this show and want to learn more about what other people have seen and experienced and how it affected them. Um, and some of it's, I don't know.
It's kind of therapeutic for a lot of people.
It is, and I don't like I don't like the feeling that I'm using somebody else's experience as entertainment
Mm,
because a lot of times they've been so profoundly impacted, they have PTSD, they
right.
have nightmares. So I don't like the whole format of it coming across or having to, snap, snap, snap. It has to go like this. I don't like that. I prefer a more personal approach to something that is so deeply personal to people. So, and when we pre-record something and then edit, to me, it's more about taking care of that person as well, because I really want to
Yeah.
take care of our witnesses.
Yeah. Yes, I'm very much with you on that. And we want this to be, for some people, it may be very therapeutic to tell their story. Both Sybilla and I believe our witnesses 100%, and we will only have people on the show who we believe are genuine and sincere.
Absolutely.
But because of that, we want to treat their stories with great deal of respect and caution, and just let them tell the story as they want to tell it.
Right.
So,
And also, like Ron provided some great video and
yeah,
stuff for us, and that can be put in so seamlessly. Um,
yeah.
so I just like the whole professional side of the whole thing, being
Mhm.
professional yet being respectful, I'm not opposed to doing live podcasts either. And Jim and I talked about that, so we'll probably be doing a couple of those too. Uh,
Yeah. And please let your friends know about this podcast, where they can find it. We would love for you guys to subscribe. All those who are subscribing currently to Sybilla's podcast, Sketching Encounters, we would love if you would come and join us as well. Not instead of, but as well as her podcast, because I definitely want to keep promoting Sybilla and everything she's doing with her podcast. But we're
Thank
going to
you.
be using some of her artwork in this podcast, like she does.
Hmm.
Probably going to be different witnesses. The ones she's interviewing and the ones we'll interview here probably are going to be, for the most part, two different um, streams of witnesses, which is great.
Hmm.
Just so you know, we have our annual Estes Park Bigfoot Days coming up the end of this month. And I was invited to come back again by the organizer and do a podcast from Estes Park. And Sybille and I, hopefully, if everything goes well, we'll be interviewing Dr. Maria and Russell. His last name escapes me just for a second. Who are both on the very popular show Expedition Bigfoot. We'll be interviewing each of them for maybe 15 or 20 minutes, as well as Cliff Barrickman from Finding Bigfoot.
Hmm.
And Cliff is no longer recording TV shows, but he's doing a ton of other things as well.
Right.
So
And he's got his museum.
he's got his museum. So we can talk museums when we have him on. And so that'll be something fun. A little bit different podcast because we'll have a live audience in Estes Park like we have in the past. So there'll be some questions from the audience to our guests who will be with us physically at the location. But yeah, it's going to be a fun podcast. But most of our podcasts are going to be this format
Right.
of Sybil and I sharing with you and then having our guests come on
Yep.
and tell their stories. Anything else you want to tell them, Sybil, about what?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. I'm good. I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
So let me just tell you a little bit about Ron Atencio, our guest tonight. Now, there's a reason why Ron is our first guest for our new podcast. This story is unbelievable. I mean, Ron reached out to me initially. I did not know Ron. He reached out to me because he wanted to talk to somebody about what had happened to him. And this was what the story he's going to tell was a number of years ago, but Ron worked for the railway. I believe it's the highest standard gauge railway in the country.
That's right.
where it reaches the highest altitude at points on its track. And so Ron reached out to me. He was not a Bigfoot guy. He probably would still say he's not a Bigfoot guy, but he had this encounter that he didn't understand, needed to talk to somebody about it. So we spent a long time on the phone, and um, I just thought this is a story unlike any story I've ever heard when it comes to Bigfoot and how Bigfoot interacts with us on technology, particularly with trains. And there's some amazing things that happened to Ron when he's now retired, but when he was working full time for the railroad. Um, this is a story you're going to have to buckle up for because this one is phenomenal.
It's great.
So,
Are you ready to
so
bring him in?
without further ado, let's
All right.
bring Ron in with
All
us.
right, here he goes.
Still
All
muted.
right, it
There
is
he
possible.
Perfect.
is.
There you go.
Woo!
So
It is
welcome
possible.
with Sybilla and I, Ron Atencio, and Ron and I have chatted quite a few times now on the phone, actually. And so this is my first time to actually meet Ron visually. I mean, we've talked on the phone a number of times, but we've never actually done a video call. So really appreciate you being on the show with us, Ron. This means a lot to both Sybilla and I.
Well, thank you, and you were a lot of help to me.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
hopefully we'll be able to get on the train together. That's my goal. One of these days is to be able to ride the train together, and you can show me where all these events happen that you're going to tell us about.
Yeah, and it won't be a train; it'll be on a high rail
It'll be on
vehicle.
right high rail vehicle, right, where we can slow down and stop and look at stuff. And
Yeah,
So
yeah,
a highway vehicle, is that a truck, like a regular truck that's on the
yes,
running
it
on
is
the rails?
a maintenance vehicle that's able to go on the rails.
Gotcha.
okay,
I've seen those. I think they're so cool.
yeah, yeah. And tell us about the railroad. How long did you work for the railroad? And tell us a little bit about where the railroad goes, the line that you were mostly working on.
Okay, I'm third generation railroad. I've been 33 years. I worked the same area that my grandfather worked when he was
Wow.
a second foreman back in the I think it's late early 60s and 70s, all the way up to the early 80s when he retired. So I was very familiar with the area. You know, he used to let me, when I was 14 years old or 12, he used to let me go with him up there
Hmm.
and experience when I was a kid. And, you know, he obviously had plans for me. So, you know, I was fortunate enough to work the same area that he did. The area that I actually covered was actually 230 miles of track. And it was between me and seven other guys that had to maintain this. So it was a challenge all the time up here. And the mountain probably took up 75 to 80% of our work effort because of the grade, the steepness, and the altitude.
Was I correct, Ron,
And,
in saying this was the highest railroad
yeah, it is the highest standard gauge
standard
railroad in the
gauge?
nation.
Okay.
It used to be the Tennessee Pass. It was 10,000 foot. But when they shut the Tennessee Pass back down in 98, I think it was, or 97, um, we came in second, so now we're first.
And what are the two ends of the line that you worked?
From Walsenburg all the way to Antonito and Monte Vista. The railroad line
Okay.
does go all the way to South Fork, but that rail line's been out of service for quite a few years.
Okay. So so as you told me the story, everything started one particular night when you were doing some maintenance on the line. Just we're just going to let you tell the story as you want to tell it, and then
Okay.
when you get to the end, we may have a few questions for you, but
Okay.
go for it.
Well, in 2022, on April 14th, our standard practice was we have heavy rains, and we had a heavy rain that day and into the evening. And the train usually departs at almost around 10 o'clock at night. So my job was to get somebody to come with me. And we were going to be about an hour in front of the train to patrol to make sure there was no rocks on the tracks and boulders, you know, as a safety thing. And the way we did that was we had a backhoe that was a high rail backhoe. And we would put that on the rail first. at the summit of the mountain, we had to usually, drive to the summit and then get on the rail down there and then put a high rail truck on behind it. And like, again, it was nighttime. We got on about the same time the train was leaving Alamosa, only we were still an hour in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we started to proceed up the west side of the mountain. Now, it's about a 12-mile climb at 2 and 3% grades. We had a few rocks, nothing major. It still was kind of light, misty rain. No moon, completely dark. I mean, dark, dark, dark.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, same old, same old. We're used to dealing with stuff like that all the time. And went up the west side, no incidents. Like I said, we had a few rocks, got to the summit and got a hold of the train crew. And I asked them, where are you guys at? And they're about maybe still an hour behind us. They were coming up on the mountain. So we're a good maybe 12, 15 miles in front of them. Told them they're good to clear to come up to the top of the mountain. We're going to hit down the east side. And that's about maybe a 14-mile run down the east side, which is the steepest side of the mountain and the most dangerous for a train to be operating down. As we proceeded down, because it was still raining and still kind of drizzle, I guess you would say, the high rail truck stayed behind me about maybe a half a mile, just because if you go around the corner and I'm stopped, he's going to run right into me because when the rail's wet, you're going to slide right into me. We've had some like problems like that every now and then that happened. So he had to maintain a distance from me. I was in the backhoe, operating the backhoe. And of course, as usual, I got a flat tire because the rear two wheels on that backhoe are on the rails.
Right.
And it caught a piece of sliver off the rail head, which it's done a dozen times to us. So I knew right away what it was when I heard the air come out, and it was like, I'd say about 2:30 at night.
Wow.
So I heard the air coming out, and I was like, man, I got to get this thing off the tracks right away. So I came up to a clearing to the left side of me, and it was about maybe a 20 or 30 foot flat shelf. And then after that, it was probably a 60-foot drop. So I figured that was a good area to get off at. So I got off the tracks there, got the high rail off, got it up in the air, jacked it up to where the tires are off the ground so the crew can change the tire tomorrow. I radioed the high rail vehicle, which was Andrew in the vehicle following me, and I told him, look, I got a flat tire. I was like, man, this night can't get any better. So I said, can you come up to me at this milepost? I'm right here. You'll see my lights on my backhoe, and I'll go over with you what happened. He goes, okay. So he rolls up on me on the rail. I walk up to him, and I had everything off on the backhoe. I had sitting there, and I told him, we got in front of the high rail truck with the lights on the high rail truck on, and I'm telling him what happened. And I told him we're going to have to get another crew up here with another tire, change this out, so, we're going to have to high rail the rest of the way down. Hope to God we don't find another boulder or something on the tracks that we can't take care of. As we're talking, I just hear this explosion on the backhoe. Glass just shattered everywhere. I mean, glass just went everywhere. And it scared the crap out of us. So we have these railroad lanterns. I don't know if you've ever seen one, but they're not good at looking at things from a distance. They're just good at looking at things that work areas and for signaling the train. So we had a lantern, and I walked over to it, and I was like, what the hell happened? And my partner went on one side of the backhoe. I went on the left side. We opened the cab door. But I mean, there's glass everywhere. And the first thing I thought was a hydraulic line broke. And when it broke, it went through the window.
Right.
So we opened the door, and I looked on the floor, and there's this 2 or 3 pound rock just sitting in the cab of the floor of the backhoe. And I'm like, what the hell happened here? So I'm looking around, and I look at this, and I pick up the rock, and he's looking at me inside the cab. He's like, wow. And I grabbed the rock. We came out from behind the backhoe up to the rail, and I'm showing him the rock, and I said, that wasn't in there, And he goes, well, what do you think happened? I said, well, it had to come off the mountain because it's raining. And I figured it rolled off the mountain, bounced up, and hit the side of the window of the backhoe and broke it. So I go back to the backhoe and I start it up and I put on all the work lights on it because we need to clean up the glass. We get the glass cleaned up and I go back in front of the high rail truck with him and we're standing there and I'm like, man, I wonder where that train is at, because that's always in the back of my mind. Where's that train at? And as we're talking, we're both looking at the backhoe, and like I said, it has all the lights on it, but they're all pointed downwards for working. They're work lights. And all of a sudden, we both see this rod go flying past us like a missile, and it hits the back arm of the backhoe, and just explodes into a million pieces. And you can hear the fragments falling on the hood of the high rail truck. And I mean, I just about dropped the load in my pants right there. I was like, what? And it was thrown.
Wow.
And so I look at Andrew, and the first thing I thought was, we have these environmentalists up there that are messing around. We've had problems with them in the past, graffiti and stuff, and trying to stop logging and trying to, we've had a few run-ins with them. So the first thing I thought was, that son of a bitch, I'm going to get him. So I looked at my partner and I handed him a spike maul handle. They're like axe handles, wooden hickory. And I said, let's go get him. So we started to go up the side of this grave, and it's about maybe a 50-foot climb to the top from the bottom of the track. And this is on the right-hand side. Andrew's in front of me about maybe 10 feet as we're climbing. And of course, we're at 9,000 foot, so it's you're sucking air. And I look up, and Andrew stopped, and he has his hand out for me to stop. And I'm like, what? What's going on? And he goes, hey, Cap. I said, what? He goes, listen. And he's real quiet. And I go, what? And you can hear something growling. And it sounded to me like a bear. And it's not a loud growl. It's just a low bass growl. I mean, you could feel it. You could almost literally feel like a bass drum hitting you in the chest. And it told me right away, whatever that is, that's a big bear. And so he looked at me, we started backing down the hill. I was like, well, we ain't gonna fight no bear. So we started backing down the hill real slowly and got down to the bottom. And again, like I said, our lights wouldn't reach that far up. But, hey, that's his territory. We're not going to mess with it. So I get on the radio and I'm worried about the train. I can actually hear the train coming down the east side. And they're not too far from us, about maybe a couple miles. And I told them, we're still here at this milepost. We got a situation going on here, and I'll let you know when we start rolling. So it's 10 mile an hour going downhill with that train. So we still have some time. As the train comes down the hill, we're at the low part of the part, and the train and the railroad is up at a higher altitude or higher above us. And there's a valley between us. And there's a curve that curves right there above us. Well, we heard the train. I could see the lights from the train, light up the side of the mountain on the other side. And I was like, oh, here it comes. And you can hear the wheels squeaking. Yeah, and with 4 locomotives trying to hold back all that weight, they're literally screaming at each other, And as it came around the corner, that light came over to our side and it literally lit up the whole area. And when we saw, I looked up, and we both looked up at the same time. There was this, and again, Jim, I can't tell you how big. I just can't underestimate. This thing was huge, bigger than 9 feet. It had to have been 10 foot. It's standing there in the open the whole time, by itself, looking down at us. And all I saw was a black mass, like a black shag carpet with a head. And it was massive. And as soon as it got lit up, as it turned to the left, I could see like a shiny spot on it. There was so much hair on it, you really couldn't make out the face at all. But I could see a shiny spot on it. And it immediately turned to the left. And as it did, its arm came up like this. And you could literally see, I ain't kidding you, I'm talking 12 inches or longer hair. And you can literally see the hair go like this. And he takes one step and he's gone. And this all happened within a second.
Wow.
And I look over at my partner, we're looking at each other and we're like, what the hell was that? You know, and we're looking at each other because we're both trying to, we won't say anything. We're just like waiting for the other guy to say, what the hell was it? And I look over at Andrew and I was like, what the fuck was that? And as we're as we said that, we can hear this thing walking away from us. And there was probably like 5 foot, 6 foot shrubbery throughout that whole mountain. It's just covered. You can hear it walking through it. And we can tell it was moving away from us because it was getting more and more distance. And we're just like, and I had to snap out of it because I was like, okay, I got a train coming up my butt. I got to do something. So I get on the radio and I told the train crew, you guys, I need you to stop. Come up. I told them what mileposts we're at. We have a situation here. And they said, okay. So they stopped the train behind the high rail truck. The conductor and engineer got out. We told them what we saw. They looked at us like we were high. I handed them 2 axe handles, and all 4 of us went up there.
Really?
And we went up there with our lanterns, and we got to the top, and we started like shining our lights around, and it looked like a bomb went off up there because I'm probably like 5'10", 5'11". These trees, maybe about half a dozen of them, were broke off at the top and laying on the ground. There was a couple that were hanging by the bark, but there was branches everywhere. And I'm looking at them like, the first thing I thought was, what idiot's coming up here cutting the top half of trees off? So we walked up to them and I shined the light on it up close. And they were literally, you could tell they were twisted, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then Andrew looked at me and he goes, hey, Cap, come over here. And I walked towards him and he goes, look. And you could see the pathway through the shrubbery that this thing made. And I've seen bears go through it and they make like a little tunnel, you know? I've seen bears run right through it. And I'm like, man, how do they do that? Because we got tons of bears up there and we're always running into them. This thing didn't make a tunnel, it made a path. And I looked at him and he goes, he asked me, do you want to go? I said, hell, I ain't going down that path. And I looked over and the conductor and engineer are looking at me like, what the hell, you know? And they said it had to be a bear. And I was like, yeah, maybe we saw some, you know. So for the sake of the engineer conductor, I kind of agreed with them. And I said, I need to get you guys out of here because we got to get you back on track. So we went back down, got into the high rail truck. I told the train crew, hey, I got to get at least a mile or 2 in front of you. I'll let you know. And then I'll give you guys permission to come on down and follow me down. We had a few rocks on the tracks, nothing major that we couldn't handle ourselves. We got to the town, off the mountain, to the next town, and got off the tracks. I told the train crew, you got it all the way to Walsenburg. It's all yours, guys. This is like 3:30 in the morning. And on the way back, it's about maybe an hour and a half drive. We're about 7 miles from the town. And I don't think me and Andrew said 2 words to each other. And I finally looked over at him. And I said, hey, you all right? And he goes, that was no bear out. And I said, yeah, I know. I said, well, are you all right? And he goes, that was no bear. And that's all he would say. And I said, well, let's go home and we'll call it a night. So I dropped him off and he drove home and then I went home and I couldn't sleep. Yeah. I kept thinking about this whole situation over and over again. Couldn't get it out of my head. Told my girlfriend about it and she looked at me like, okay. Like, what are you guys are smoking? She didn't say that, but she understood and she was understanding about it. But she was like, okay, I think you're overworked. But anyway, I couldn't sleep. I sat there on the couch and I was just flipping through the channels and I had been awake since probably almost 20 hours straight. And I finally fell asleep. The next day, I went to the office and I'm the supervisor. And we have a little job briefing in the morning. And as soon as I walked into the office, or the area that we have our job briefing at, all 7 of us meet every morning. We, talk, and we talk about what's going to happen today and who's going to do what. And we have our coffee and, try to make it as relaxing as possible in the morning. And I go in there and I hear yelling and screaming going on. And I hear Andrew's voice and he sounds mad. Well, apparently the train crew had told other people and it got out. And they were giving Andrew a hard time. And he wasn't in the mood for it. And when I walked in, I asked him what happened. And he told me those guys need to shut their mouths and they need to quit. And about what, and they told me, and I was like, you know what, guys, that's enough. He's obviously not in the mood. So let it lie. I told Andrew to go home, because he was just hot about it. And I didn't need him there that way. So he went home and worked on with the rest of the guys. And again, there was always snickering and teasing about it. Andrew got a hold of me later on, within a week, I think it was. And he told me I can't go on that mountain anymore, Cap. And I looked at him, I go, why? He goes, well, I knew why. I said, and he said, I just can't do it. I said, Andrew, I said, that's fine. I said, if you're not comfortable doing it, I won't put you up there. Okay. And he says, okay. So I left him in the valley, to do work. And I kind of kept it at that for a while. Andrew's a very religious guy. He's the type of guy that makes the sign of the cross every time he goes by a cemetery or church or whatever. Not realizing how much this messed him up to the point, I guess, all his beliefs just went to hell with him. And I was going to retire within a few months. When my retirement came up, my last day, it was a good retirement. And a month later, I get called from the guys and they said, have you heard from Andrew? And I said, no, I haven't. Well, he quit showing up to work. I was like, okay, I'll see if I can call him. Wouldn't answer my phone calls, wouldn't do anything. Finally got a hold of him and I said, I'm just going to go up and talk to him. So I got on my motorcycle, went up there, and what it comes down to is he was so freaked out about what happened that he just called it quits. And he was so embarrassed about it that he didn't want to face anybody about it. So he didn't tell anybody he was quitting. He just didn't show up, which is not like him. And I tried talking him into going back, but you know what? He's his own man. I can't tell him what to do. He knows what he can and cannot do, and forcing him, and if something goes wrong, then he's going to blame it on me. So I just told him, you know what, dude, you're a big guy. I don't want to see you leave, but you got to do what you got to do, I guess. And that's the last time I talked to him, and it's been over a year now.
Wow.
And again, he still won't answer my phone calls. When I was up there after this happened, this is how freaked out I was. I strapped my AR with me because I have to do walking inspections up there on that track, which means I have to walk that track. And this is a federal requirement. So I have to literally get out of my high rail truck and walk the rails and look at it and make sure and mark any defects and things like that.
How often do you have to do that, Ron?
Once a month.
Okay.
Wow.
And if I can't do it all, I'll usually assign one of the guys to do it, whatever, finish up for me or whatever. And when the FRA comes down, they'll send like 3 or 4 guys down and they'll walk that track to inspect it. So I don't want any write-ups from them, so I'm pretty anal about that stuff. Plus, it's a pretty dangerous mountain for a train. So if we miss something and a train goes off the side of a cliff, people get killed.
Yeah.
So we take our track inspection very, very seriously. And I found myself looking out in the woods now more than anything. I didn't even look at the rail, and I get mad at myself because then I had to back up, 100, 200 feet because I didn't look at the rail one time because I'm too busy looking out around. And I was so paranoid to the point to where I had a hard time doing this. That summer we went camping and I just can't do it anymore. I was in the tent and girlfriend went camping. I couldn't relax. I was literally in that tent just listening to every single thing walking up to that tent, whether it was a squirrel, a mouse, whatever. And I got out to the point where I just got in my truck with my weapon and I just basically guarded my tent with my girlfriend in it.
Wow.
And just stayed awake the whole night. And I finally told her, I can't do this. I said, I'm sorry, but I can't go camping anymore. I just can't do it. I'm not relaxing. It's just not relaxing for me. And so I ended up getting rid of all the camping gear.
Wow. Wow.
And I'll tell you guys, I doubt myself every single day on what we saw. And if I was by myself, I swear to God, I would talk myself into saying I didn't see what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
But since the both of us were there and we both saw the same thing,
Yeah.
it made me think, wow, how can something so massive be not seen? And of all the years I looked up there, why the heck did this happen now? Why didn't I see this thing sooner? You know, why didn't it happen sooner? Well, I told Jim why. It's because we don't ever look at the scenery. We're always looking at the rail. We're always, paying attention to our jobs.
Sure.
We're not there to sightsee. So this thing probably could have stood right there in plain open and we never would have noticed it. There are 2 tunnels up there that we have to inspect. And both these tunnels up there are on a curve. So there's no light. You can't see the light on the tunnels on the other end. And they're about maybe 600 or 800 foot long.
Wow.
So, a lot of animals use those tunnels to go through, bears and everything. And I've encountered bears through there. It's not a nice thing. But it changed everything on my outlook on up there. It got me to the point I literally felt like I was in a war zone. I had to be on my guard. Because the thing that scares me the heck is this thing had to have been intelligent because it could have came down that mountain and killed us at any time. It didn't. It stood there and watched us for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I know when I probably came off the tracks, out of all the stupid places they get off, I had to get off right there where he was building a house or whatever. And it always bothered him.
Yeah.
How far was he from you standing, do you think? Would you guess?
We were at the rail in front of the high rail truck, and it was about maybe a 45 to 50 foot climb to the top of that hill.
And he was standing at the top. He was standing at
He
the
was
top.
standing right there in the open, at the top, just looking down at us. And his color was just a black mass. And like I said, it was completely dark. There was no moon in the sky. It was drizzling. It was just a light rain, completely cloudy. I mean, literally, if you turned off your flashlight, you would not be able to see the hand in front of your face.
Mm-hmm.
That's how dark it was up there. And we would have heard it move. We would have heard it move if it walked up to that point. And then I look back now and the corral, how close we came to just running into the crotch of this thing going up that hill without seeing it. And it just gets you thinking like, to this day, I don't even look at the mountains anymore. Same way, I don't.
Yeah.
Because I'm too busy looking. I don't want to find this thing. I wish I could go back and not see it. I really do.
Yeah.
I don't, I have no interest to go find it. I have no interest to prove it. I have no interest to do anything but just, ignore it. And I can't ignore it because my mind won't let me ignore it.
Yeah.
Right.
So this was almost a year ago exactly, because we're the 6th, April. And this happened on the 14th of April.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I contacted you because I didn't know what to do. After what happened to Andrew, I didn't have anybody to talk to.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I Googled Bigfoot researchers, and your name popped up in Bailey, Colorado. And I was like, okay. And your phone number was on there. And I called you. And I remember asking you questions because I was like, are these things real? I mean, really? Do you believe in this? Mm-hmm. And you told me pretty much, and you listened to my story. And I got to admit, after talking to you about it, I felt a lot better. I felt like 100 pounds was off my shoulder.
Well, you weren't crazy. At least you could say other people believe this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't care whether people believe us or not. I'm just telling you what happened to us and how this thing affected us. We're men. We're tough guys. We're up there during the winter, during derailments. It doesn't matter whether the wind's blowing 60 miles an hour, whether it's snowing 6 feet of snow. We still have to go through and we have to endure. We got to get that train through. That's our job. And we've done that every single time. So we're not guys that just take things lightly. I mean, and this thing literally, I'm just talking about right now. I don't know, guys. I really don't know. I don't know how to answer this. I don't know I know what we saw and I know what it did. And I know where it was at. And I know that the rock was thrown.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
it
thrown
made me
hard,
think,
thrown very hard.
Yeah.
oh my God. I mean, it was like a missile. I mean, literally.
In darkness.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we had
in
the headlights on.
darkness.
We had the headlights on our high rail truck on.
Yeah.
And that's what we saw go right in front of us.
Wow.
And then when it hit thank God it hit the arm, because if it broke another window, I'd have a hell of a time explaining that one. So in the report, I had to put down that the rock came down and broke the window out. And I know that first rock was probably thrown from him. But I just put down that the rock came down because of rain. And it jumped up and broke the window of the backhoe. I mean, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
I have to do drug tests for the rest of my life from now on in.
Yeah.
So, I marked it down as that, and I marked down the backhoe tire broke and everything like that. But I got to thinking, and I told Jim this, as the years before that, I started thinking back about all the things that we've been having problems with up there.
Yeah.
A year before that, we had 52 trees on the tracks.
52 trees.
52 trees within a mile.
All at the
within a
same
quarter.
time. Not
Yeah.
over day. Wow.
No, this is all at once.
Wow.
But these things, they were drugged there. You can see where they were drugged.
Wow.
And it made me mad as hell because, again, we were having problems at the time with these environmentalists.
Mm.
And at the time, I blamed it on them. I blamed it on vandalism. And so we had to get the backhoe and we had to clear that up ASAP because we had a train going through that night. So a lot of us just got chainsaws and just got the backhoe and we just started cutting our way through. As I looked to where the trees were drug at, I never thought about looking for footprints. I never thought about looking for anything other than the drag marks. I said, these things were dragged here, guys. So I had it with these people. I was like, man, if I catch these people up here, I'm going to kill them. And then at one point we had railroad ties that we had laid out. And I told Jim about this. I lay out ties along the tracks for us to replace
Right.
in the future. So I mark bad ties. We go out and we place these ties in these areas that need to be replaced. These ties have been laying there for about maybe a month. I was hoping to get to them within a week or two. We've just been so busy with other things. The train crew got a hold of me on a return trip and said, hey, did you guys move those ties up there that you guys laid out? And I said, no. I said, we're going to put them in. I said, I just haven't had time. He said, well, they're not there anymore. So I was like, God dang it. So I went up on my own high rail truck, went up there, and I saw these ties gone that we had laid out. And it just fired me up. I was like, I've had it. So I went and got a friend of mine down in the next town, and he's a town marshal. And I said, can you come up here? And I'm tired of this crap. I want to show him. Eventually, what I have to do is report it to the FRA. There are law enforcement. Nobody has jurisdiction on a railroad except FRA.
Gotcha.
State Patrol doesn't have jurisdiction. County doesn't have jurisdiction. So their hands are tied because it's federal property.
What does the FRA stand for, Ron?
Federal Railroad Administration.
Okay.
And they come up and do our track inspections every year.
Right.
And I know the inspector himself. I've known him for years. And very good guy. And I get along with him great. And I told him we've been having trouble up here, graffiti on spray painting our equipment, with stupid logos and things like that, and free so-and-so. And I chalked it up to those guys. When I brought Harold up there, he got out of the high rail truck, and I told him the ties were laying right here. And as we look, we could see the ties laying on the hill coming down to the tracks on the other side. And they were laying there on the hill on the side. There was a few of them, not all of them. I think there was like maybe half a dozen. And so he went over to go look at them. And he goes, how much they weigh? And I said, well, they're oak ties. They weigh about 230 pounds a piece. I said, It takes two of us to offload them. They're extremely heavy. And the reason why they have to be that way is because they're on a curve. And we don't want to have to change these ties out for another 50 years. And these ties are so hard to put spikes in that you can literally bend the spike trying to get it in it. So we have to pre-drill the holes on these ties.
Yeah.
in order to get spikes to stay in there. And so they're extremely heavy. They're extremely expensive. And so he called me over and I said, what's going on? He goes, how much these ties weigh? And I told him. He walked up to one end of the tie and he was like, I could barely lift it an inch off the ground on one end. And I said, yeah, I know. They're heavy. And he brought up a question, which it didn't faze me. I don't know why I didn't figure this out, but how'd they get this here? And I said, well, I don't know. They carry them. I'm looking around and he goes, I don't see drag. So he looks over and he sees where where the tie was thrown
Oh
and it hit
my.
the other side of the hill. And you can see these impacts and where the tie bounced up and landed where it landed at.
Oh my.
How much
And
did
he
you
goes,
say they weigh, each of those ties?
230.
they're either 240 or 250.
It's so
And that thing
something
is
was throwing
bouncing.
them. Something's
Something was
throwing.
throwing them. And he asked me how many guys would it take to throw that. And I said, God, I don't know, 3 or 4. But these, environmentalists would probably take a dozen of them, But, it would take some. He goes, well, you think they got some equipment up here to do this? I said, I couldn't tell you.
Wow.
Um,
So he
but
was
it just, yeah,
stumped about how they got up on the side of the hill.
yeah. And,
Was there a
I found
road?
it.
Was there a
No,
road close to it?
there's no roads up there at
no
all.
roads. No roads.
The
So
only way you can get up there is by high rail truck.
yeah. See, so that
Period.
kind of
That
extinguishes that.
eliminates a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause-
And don't get me wrong, I've caught these people up there hiking on the tracks and I kick them off because I know they're up to no good.
Yeah.
So we usually catch them trying to hike up the tracks because that's the only way up there. Most of it's private property up there. So the fence line is 50 feet to 100 foot away from the tracks because that railroad was put up there in 1903.
Wow.
And so in those days, the government gave the railroad right away. Whatever you need, take it. And the railroad did. And in time, people bought property and stuff like that. So, along the tracks and everything like that. But that railroad, the lease or the property right away is from 1903. And it still stands to this day.
So
And that's
there's a fence on both sides of the train?
yes, there's fence lines
Wow.
up there.
Okay.
And
I
it's
didn't
not our
realize
fence
that.
lines. It's their fence line because
Yeah.
people are very possessive about their property up there.
Right.
And they don't want any trespassers.
Right.
So you'll see no trespassing signs all along the rail line up when you're going up there because one of the main property owners up there used to be Malcolm Forbes. He had a huge retreat up there.
Wow.
And he sold it and these other people bought it. I don't know who owns it now. But he owns a lot of property up there.
So
Along
their land butts right up to the
but right up
railroad. Okay.
against our track. So you can't drive up there on their property.
Right.
They're not going to let you. They have their own law enforcement,
Right.
security people up there.
Wow.
Wow.
And they're extremely, extremely anal about anybody being on their property, so, and that even goes with us, So, and I've gotten along with them for the most part. There's other owners we've had issues with, but, people complaining, I built a house here and why you have to put that train through there at 11 o'clock at night. And I tell them, you know what? You built your house next to a track. We didn't build it next to your house.
Right.
Yeah.
That rail's been there for 138 years.
Wow.
It's not like we snuck up on you.
No.
Built
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what did Malcolm say after
Yeah.
he inspected? What did he
Oh.
think?
Who now?
Your friend.
He just told me it was weird. Oh, and then we found the rest of the ties that were thrown down the side on the other side. The rest of the ties, and we call them 100-pound keg of spikes. Somebody picked up those 100-pound kegs of spikes and just threw them off the side, and you can see them broke out everywhere. And I told him, well, those ties are lost because I'm not sending somebody down there to get those ties and crank them up here. There's no way.
A 250-pound tie higher in the world and you can get it back up.
Exactly. At a 1% grade trying to climb up.
Wow.
No. And we still got rail cars from the old days that are still laying down there when they derailed.
Oh, wow.
No,
there was no way to get them up, I'm sure, to get anything.
No. But they're still down there to this day.
Wow.
And it's throughout the years, it's a railroad graveyard up there. You can look at certain areas, you'll see old rail cars down there back in the 40s and 50s that went off the tracks and are still there to this day.
So,
Even the
so
derailment.
the
Excuse me?
tracks are built on a shelf, basically,
Yes,
up on
they
one
blasted.
side, down on the other.
Yes, they blasted their way through that mountain.
Hmm.
They did. And, like I said, they blasted their way to two tunnels up there, all the way up to the, why the railroad built that railroad through there? It's the stupidest thing I ever saw in my life. The original rail line was the Levita Pass Highway.
Hmm.
That was the original rail line. It was narrow gauge. When they standard gauged it in 1903, they went this other way, which I always thought, what the hell did they do this? They added, they made it more difficult. And what I found out was the government would give the railroad bonuses for every mile that they put in. So the more curves, the more money the railroad got back in those days.
Wow.
So that's why they did what they did.
Wow.
I wish if I had my way, I'd change that back to the way it was originally, but
Yeah.
it is a very dangerous pass. As an engineer, you have to know your crap with the train going down that grade. You do.
Right.
We've had engineers, we had runaways, we've had some major derailments up there. It's always a pain in the butt because you can't get equipment up there, you can't drive up there, you have to get everything up by rail. Load of shit on, but we have to load stuff on flat cars and take it up with the train and offload it. Everything has to be taken up by rail.
Wow.
So when you have a derailment, that train line is blocked effectively till you get that train back on the tracks.
And it's a mad dash. It is a mad dash race to get it open.
Yeah.
Because when the train doesn't make money, we don't make money. And so the pressure is on us to get that track line open.
Yeah.
And we've been. Go ahead.
You said that there was another incident where something really strange happened.
Oh, well, this was after I retired. One of the guys, I won't mention his name, but he got a hold of me and he goes, "Hey, that thing that happened to you and Andrew?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, we had something funny happen." I go, "What's that?" They had a derailment. And this was this year or last year, I think in November or something like that.
Okay.
During the winter. So they took the re-railers up there. And they were setting out all the equipment for them to get everything re-railed. And sometimes it takes a whole day just to get your logistics done. And then you go up the next day to do the work.
Right.
Well, they had laid everything out. Well, they went up the next day and the re-railers were gone.
And describe a re-railer. What does that mean?
These re-railers are heavy, most awkward, crumbling piece of crap. But anybody who works on the railroad knows exactly what I'm talking about. You have to put it on the rail. And what these things do is you pull the train up when it's on the ground. You have to pull it up to that re-railer, and what it does is it lifts it up as you pull it with the locomotive and slides it onto the rail on top.
So it kind of guides it back onto the track. Okay.
They're wheel guides.
So they've got to be really solid for a whole train to get back on the track.
And like I said, they weigh at least 120 pounds. Just for one.
Okay.
And they come in pairs because you have one for one side that flares out one direction and one for the other side.
Okay.
Because when a train derails, there's always a wheel on the inside and there's always a wheel on the outside. So they have to be two different ones in order to get that train up there. He said they ended up finding it. And it was in a tree.
The re-railer was in a tree.
The re-railers were in a tree.
And they're attached together.
They're attached together with a chain.
So that's 240 pounds of
240
steel.
pounds up in a tree.
Like how high up in the tree?
He told me they were at least 15 foot.
Oh my gosh. This is unbelievable.
And they had to chop the tree down in order to get to it.
Oh my gosh. And what did they think? I mean, what could you think when you see these things up in a tree?
That's what's funny is everybody started thinking about me and what happened to us up there.
Yeah.
And nobody said a damn word.
Really?
Well, I bet they weren't making so much fun of you anymore because
saying the F word up there, saying the Bigfoot word up there is like a sin. You just don't do that. Everybody thinks you're crazy. But nobody said anything. They just like, well, it must have been a bear that drug it up there or something,
Yeah, right.
you know? And they just left it at that.
Oh my
They found him,
gosh. That's
they drug
unbelievable.
him back, and they used him. Problem
Wow.
solved. No questions asked. And that's basically the way it used to be all the time, but
Isn't that insane? That's
it is.
insane. How
I
far
mean,
away, how far away did they take them up in, how far away was the tree from the actual where they had been left?
I'm assuming the tree was probably right along the right of way. He didn't, he didn't state. He just said it was in a tree. So I'm assuming it was right along the right of way because if they had walked off the right of way, they would have been off the tracks. There was no reason for them to be off the tracks,
right.
you know?
So
So,
so for a 240 pounds of steel to get up in a tree, if I'm just trying to imagine if they were heaved up in there, it would have snapped the branches when it hit the tree. It's almost
yeah.
like they had to be placed up there in the tree.
Well, what he told me was they were hanging by the chain, connecting them, just dangling, is what he told me.
Must have been a big tree to hold 240 pounds of
It was. It was a pretty good
weight.
sized tree.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. There was no way nobody, he says, there was nobody could go up there and grab them and bring them down.
No. No.
So they, like I said, they literally chopped the tree down to get it. And continued with re-railing what they had to re-rail with. And just little things like that are occurring up there. Again, no sighting except the one we saw. There was incidences in the snow time. We have winters up there that are horrible. We have snow sometimes 12-foot deep
Wow.
Mm.
drifts, and it's a constant fight up there with winter time. And
You have
when we plow,
plows on the
we had plows on the locomotives, but we have a special plow that does the plowing up there.
okay.
And it has wings on the side to push the snow further away from the track. Now, once you plow a railroad track, all you see is just the two strips of rail, and that's
Right.
it. Well, there's been times, and I've noticed this, where there have been footprints down the middle of the tracks.
Hmm.
I've noticed the footprints. The engineers noticed their footprints. One of the engineers that I talked to told me that these were footprints, and I said, "No, they're not." I said, "I figured it's somebody in snowshoes." Because
Hmm.
I said, "You sure they're not snowshoes?" He goes, "No, they look like footprints to me." And I was like, "Okay." And he told me this like 2 years ago, and asked us if we'd been up there working. And I said, "No." And if I was, I wouldn't be walking on the goddamn middle of the track with the snow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I caught cross country skiers up there, going down the middle of the tracks, and I kick them off. I said, "Look, guys, you'll never hear a train come up on you, or one of us, so get off the tracks."
Yeah.
I've seen them. I've seen the footprints. And I just figured it was somebody in snowshoes just messing around because they'll come up the side of a hill and then they'll go down the tracks a few hundred feet, maybe a
Hmm.
mile, and then go up the other side of the tracks. I always thought, man, somebody's got too much time on their hands. I mean, this is what you do for a workout. Wow.
Wow.
My hat's off to you, but if I catch you up here, I'm going to kick your butt. Um,
Wow, that's amazing though.
yeah. And I
I
told
mean,
Jim this, and I said, what was odd about the whole footprint thing was, and it's every time I went up there to go inspect track, I'd always see the same footprints, until the next snow. But they were in a straight line. It was weird because there's like I don't know, like walking a tightrope, I would
Uh-huh.
say.
So they weren't offset like we would
No, they
do.
weren't offset and staggered. They were just like a straight line.
Hmm.
And I figured, well, maybe that's the way you got to walk with snowshoes. I never wore snowshoes in my life. So
You can't walk in a straight line with snowshoes. You'll fall
yeah,
down
I don't,
because you'll step on the toe of your shoe in front of you, and
Right.
so you'll be stuck like you can't go. And so
yeah.
um
Yeah.
so that removes the snowshoe option entirely because
Okay. Well,
if anyone's
that's what I
ever
was trying to do.
if anyone's ever hiked in snowshoes, you have to keep your feet apart because because these shoes are so big, you don't want to step on your own because I've done it. You step on your other shoe and your face plant in the snow. That's
Yeah.
exactly
Right.
what happens.
Right.
Yeah. I don't, again, I don't know what the fun is in doing that, but hey, people work in offices, I mean, more power to them.
Hey, I got a question about the tree incident.
Yes, sir.
Um, were any of these trees that look like any of them were cut with a tool?
No, we had a big fire up there about 2 years ago, a massive fire. And a lot of those trees were dead. None of them were cut. They were just
pulled
broke.
out,
Yeah.
broke
They
off.
weren't pulled out, they were broke. There was a
Hmm.
couple of green trees that we saw by the roots that were there.
Hmm.
I never really gave thought about it, Again, I was focused on getting that goddamn track cleared up.
Yeah.
And I wanted to kill a bunch of Greenpeace people.
Yeah, because if protesters were putting trees on the tracks, they
That's
would have had
dangerous.
it's dangerous for one. You can kill people when the train
Oh, it's
derails.
vandalism. It's considered an act of terrorism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they would have had to have chainsaws to cut those trees down to get them across the tracks, and none of these were cut that way, from what you told me. So
no, and the thing was, I wish I would have stayed and actually investigated it more. But again, we're not thinking about this, and my priority is get that track cleared.
Yeah.
That's my job. That's my priority, is to get that track cleared. That's the only thing I was concentrating on, and I have tunnel vision when it comes to doing things like that.
And it must have taken all day to get 52 trees off the track.
It took most of the day, yes. Yes. A lot of them a couple of us can push off the side,
Yeah.
There's a few that we can just like pick it up ourselves and throw them.
Right.
But there are a few that we had to use the backhoe to pick them up.
Where this happened, where the trees were laid across the track, was it close to the area where you had your sighting?
Probably within about maybe 2 miles below it.
Wow.
It wasn't above it, it was below it.
Isn't that interesting?
Tunnels, I would say, between the two tunnels that are up there. We got a tunnel up there. It's called the upper tunnel and the lower tunnel. And it was in between them both.
And how about the re-railer? How close was that to where you had your sighting?
From what Warren what he was telling me was, he said it was milepost 204. Our sighting was milepost 205.8.
Wow.
Wow.
So pretty close.
Not very far away.
Yeah, maybe 1.25 miles, maybe 1.75 miles.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they had a train that derailed on a curve, and it messed up a bunch of ties and rail. And
do they know what caused the derailment?
that's a touchy subject sometimes, because the engineers don't want to take fault for bad driving. So they'll blame the track, and then we'll blame the engineer for not handling the train right. The way it goes around.
Because they were going too fast? Is that what you would have thought?
Well, I can tell you I was an engineer, and I can tell you, when you're going down a hill and you got locomotives on the head end and you're going down a 2% grade and you got 40 cars loads, when you go around a curve and you apply the brakes too much, the rest of that train is moving at a certain pace, and you're pushing back on it, and it's coming down the other half, and you're going around a curve, it's going to throw that middle car off the tracks on a curve.
Oh, wow.
Just from the sheer, this is why you got to know what you're doing up there when you're running the train. I can teach any monkey to move a locomotive around. That's no problem. It's train handling. That's the art. Is knowing how to feel that train. And there have been a few incidents where nobody's perfect.
Right.
Engineers messed up.
Sure.
And it's probably different every load, depending upon how much weight is in each car. How many cars?
Exactly. Only the most seasoned engineers are up there. Okay, you don't stick rookies up there. Because when you have a derailment up there, it could be millions of dollars involved. And we don't want derailments up there because it's a pain in the butt.
Right.
How many cars typically would go off on a derailment?
Well, at nighttime, remember the old days when they had cabooses? Well, when a car derails up there on that mountain, there's so many curves that it's at nighttime. They'll drag that car for 2 miles before they realize something's wrong.
Oh, wow. My goodness.
They'll drag it up a hill for a mile before they realize something wrong. The train will either have to pull apart and disconnect the air hoses to put the train in emergency for them to realize something's wrong.
Wow.
Now, back in the old days, the guy in the caboose, that's what he watched out for.
Oh, yeah.
But they don't have cabooses anymore. And so I've had train crews, say, I had one train crew one time said they saw sparks going around a curve and they knew something was wrong
Hmm.
and they stopped the train. But I've had them drag rail cars 1 or 2 miles before they realized something was wrong.
Wow. That's
And
fascinating.
that's a lot of track to mess up.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah, it gets to be a nightmare up here. So that's why you have to be, as an engineer, you have to be on your A game on that.
Yeah.
Right? Wow.
You really, really do. And we're always looking for broken rail because I told Jim in rail, there's different sizes of it, but rail will grow in extreme heat. It'll grow inches.
Really?
Yes. And then in the cold, it'll shrink inches. And they'll break apart, they'll pull apart, they'll break in two. And so during the wintertime, we're always up there looking for rail breaks or pull aparts, we call them.
Yeah.
Because it's so cold up there that it literally pull a rail apart. And I've seen rails that tear like paper. And that's Mother Nature.
Wow.
So
it's fascinating.
Things that, it's just things that you have to keep on the lookout up there. That's why we don't look around to see animals. Like I said, we see bears all the time. I think I sent you a video, Jim, where a rail.
Yeah, actually, I'll try and pull that up, and maybe we can put it into the edited
there were
version.
6 bears. It was Coors Grain.
Oh wow!
And when we have a grain car go off the side, oh my God! Every turkey, every bear,
every
is over there. It's a free for all.
Yeah, I bet.
Free lunch.
And there were bears inside this car.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
wow.
So they're everywhere. The bears are all over. We're used to seeing them. It's the mountain lions you got to be watching out for. Those are the things that always scare me is the mountain lions because they can sit in a tree and jump on you. You would never know it. But I told Jim, like the mountain lions, you won't even really see them. They're like ghosts. I call them like a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see them jump across the tracks, and the last thing you'll see is that tail.
Yeah, big long tail.
Like, that's a mountain lion.
Yeah.
And there's times the FRA won't even go up there. They said, because I'll have my inspector, the guy from the FRA, tell me, "You guys seen mountain lions up here?" I said, "Well, we saw one up here by this mountain post a week ago." He won't even walk the track. He'll go around it. Okay, well, I'm not going there. Wow. Okay, that's fine. But those are the major things we always see up there that we always. And like I said, we look down the tracks. We don't look around.
Yeah,
I do now, but back then I didn't.
You know, when I hear all these things that you've mentioned, I know there's people that are going to be listening to this podcast who are going to say, well, maybe it was a bear, maybe it was this, maybe it was that. But when you take everything together, the rocks that were thrown with such force, they exploded on impact on this backhoe, the trees across the tracks, the 250-pound railroad ties thrown so hard against the mountain that they left an impact point on the mountain.
Right.
And then these 240-pound re-railers up in a tree. And I'm thinking, okay, you have to be logical at some point and say, okay, if you don't want to say it's a Bigfoot, then what else could do any of this? Any of it. I mean, it's superhuman strength.
Yeah.
There's no human in the world. There's no human in the world that could throw a 240-pound weight 15 feet up in a tree. I mean, I ask you a question. Why hasn't anybody got one? Why hasn't anybody?
Well,
as big as these things are, the one we saw.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, to me, it'd be like a raisin in a bowl of milk.
Yeah. No, they probably have. They're just not going to let us know that they have. Yeah.
Not civilians, but military or government have probably caught them or killed them. But just think about how many things happened. I mean, I'm sure some of your crew have to believe that Bigfoot is real because there's no other explanation for any of that stuff that happened. Because it wasn't Greenpeace, it wasn't another environmental group. This is phenomenally. I mean, the power that it takes to do the things that you've talked about is and I used to talk about this on our podcast. It's Superman comic book stuff. I mean, literally, humans could not do it, and
Mm.
certainly not out there in the middle of godforsaken nowhere. To be able to throw this stuff around, these railroad ties and these steel re-railers,
And it
what else could it be?
makes you wonder why too, why in that one particular section, like why was that Sasquatch
Hmm.
so pissed off about
Yeah.
them, obviously did not want them there. Like when they had to pull off because of the flat tire and you're just sitting there,
Mhm.
he was definitely letting you know that he was not pleased with that machinery being there. But it
Well,
makes you
he had a
wonder.
good way of telling us that he was not pleased.
Yeah.
I mean, his
But
point came across. I mean,
yeah. So, but
Yeah.
there's the tree thing, there's the re-railers, all kind of within a, 2-mile radius, probably. I wonder what happened to that Sasquatch. Why was he so
Hmm.
aggressive in that one area? It just
the
makes
only
me
reason
curious.
bears get aggressive is because there's others around or cubs or
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I don't
And
even know why they're up there. I don't even know why they exist. Like I said, I'm still in denial about it. I'm still,
hmm.
You're still processing. You're still
Yeah, you are.
processing.
You are. Even now you're processing.
Yeah.
it just, I don't know. I
And
wish I could explain it. I just wish to God I had a camera. I wish to God I had
yeah, for sure.
something, but
For
not one
sure.
of us ever thought about pulling out
So,
anything.
so do we.
Well,
Yeah,
you only had a couple of seconds of view time, and
Right.
it was pitch black at night. That's the
Right.
last thing you're going to be thinking about as a camera in those circumstances.
what I can actually tell you what I did was after that incident, as I bought a camera for my high rail truck.
Hmm.
After that, I bought one and I put it on
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
I
get
was
that.
like, that's, and everybody's like, why do you have a captain? Why do you have a camera on here? I said, just to document stuff. I said, when you
Exactly.
guys aren't working, when I drive up on you guys and you're not working, I can show everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what you tell them. But,
Yeah.
and too, when I think about those re-railers and I'm thinking, okay, why would a Sasquatch toss the re-railers in the tree? And then I'm thinking, somehow it seems that Sasquatch knew the only way to get that train back on that track was with that pair of re-railers. So it grabbed the one thing you had to have to get that train back on the track and it threw it up in a tree.
So
Maybe
you're saying the
hoping
thing must have been watching us a few times up there?
I must have been. I mean, it must have known that piece of equipment
Yeah, it's
was
very
essential
important.
to getting the train back on the track.
Yeah, it is
Why
deep.
else would they pick that thing up and toss it up in a tree? It's like having somebody. I've known guys that have done this where you're stopped at a light in some other country and some guy comes up behind you and he's just honking, and I've known guys to get out, go back to the guy's car, reach in, grab his keys, throw them off the side of the road, and go get back in their car and drive off. You're making it clear this you're bugging me by doing this, and I'm going to take away what you have to get this train back on the track. I'm going to throw it up in that tree because you can't get up in there. And just I mean that piece of equipment. Why that piece of equipment?
So
Yeah,
intelligent.
I never thought about it till now, but
Yeah.
I just wish he would have wrote us a strongly worded letter. I would have got the point.
I love
You know?
that. I
So
love that.
intelligent though, about the
Yeah,
intelligence
Oh
behind them.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 for sure.
Yeah.
yeah. What you just said right there is like, oh, wow. Well, it had to have been because they could have killed us when it was up on that hill. I
Yeah.
think it could have came down, but it wasn't afraid of us.
No.
That's what gets me. It was not afraid of us. And there isn't an animal up there that's not afraid of us. They run from us all the time.
And the
I've,
and
I,
this
and I can tell you this much, in the old days, we used to drive speeder cars, little rail cars that go on the tracks before high rail trucks. And one time I was doing a track inspection, I stopped and I was repairing some missing bolts on a track that was a little ways from the car. And I heard something in my car. I look back and there's a bear eating my pork rinds.
oh gosh.
Really?
Yeah, he's in the goddamn car eating my pork rinds. And I never saw him until I heard some banging going on in my little rail car. And I'm looking back, what the heck? And I look back and it's bear. And he walked got done eating my pork rinds, walked around. He maintained about a 20-foot distance, but he didn't run. He wasn't even afraid of me. And I had the spike ball in my hands, and I was like, come on, don't
Yeah.
do this to me. And he started walking down the track, and as he was walking, I've never seen a bear do this, but there'd be like we call it river rocks between the ties of the tracks.
Sure. Yeah.
Mm.
He would stick his claw in there and flip those rocks up in the air and lick the bugs from underneath it. And I've never seen a bear ever do that. And I'm like, okay, that's the guy that's been doing that, because I see these big rocks in the middle of the tracks.
Yeah.
And I go, there's my culprit.
Right.
They weren't there the other day, and I watched him do that as he walked down the tracks. He was just flipping rocks up, didn't throw them. He just got on his claw, dug it up,
And that could explain a lot of the rocks on the tracks.
On the tracks, yeah.
Yeah, I could believe that easily.
yeah. But they were dug up in the middle of the tracks. They weren't thrown from the top.
Right. They weren't thrown down.
No.
And you think that rock, let's say it weighed 4 or 5 pounds, the first one that broke the glass.
Oh, at least.
If that had hit either of you, you'd be dead. I mean, it would have killed you.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. We had our hard hats on. That would have went right through them like nothing.
Yeah. Because a 4 or 5 pound rock, I mean, how big would you have said it was? I mean, I think.
Oh, my God. When I took it out, I had it with both hands like this.
Oh, my gosh. That's huge. That is huge.
Literally took it out like this. And I walked up and I chilled him. I said, that wasn't in there.
Wow.
And I'm looking for hydraulic fluid, everything to see the reason why that window broke. But
Yeah.
now I know why.
Again, that the strength, not only the strength to
The
throw
accuracy.
it, but the aim to hit it and smash that window. And you guys were standing right there. I mean, right when it hit the arm of the backhoe, you were standing right there, right?
Yeah, we're about maybe 15 feet away, maybe 20.
The fact that it actually hit the arm, I mean, I was thinking, that's unbelievable.
Because I went up like this to shield myself, and we had our hard hats on, but I could actually hear the pellets in the rocks, fragments landing on the hood of the high rail truck.
Jeez.
Wow.
And the first thing I thought was, that was thrown.
Yeah.
That didn't fall. That was thrown. And the first thing I was like, okay, I'm going to kill these people. I'm going to kill these people.
Yeah, because they nearly killed you with the rocks.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that's why I went up there in anger. And I was going to get that spike ball handle, and I was going to whack me up some heads with that thing. And when I heard that growl, we both heard that growl. We're like,
man.
I'm not even going to pick a fight with a bear.
No.
But thank God that wasn't a bear that was growling at us. And, just that growl alone haunts me.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet it does.
If I ever heard that again, I would never think it's a bear. I've heard bear.
Ron, it took a lot. It took a lot for you to call me the first time. It took even more for you to be willing to come on.
You have no idea.
Our podcast, and come on here and talk about it publicly.
You have no idea. Now that I'm retired, I don't care anymore.
Yeah, but that's not lost on Sybilla and I that you're willing to tell this story, because this is an unbelievable story. And
yeah, totally unbelievable. I can just tell you what I saw and what I witnessed and the things I had to deal with.
Yeah.
Whole time.
And I hope your friend can find.
Yeah, me too.
Can find some peace. I'm concerned about him.
I am too. And I'll run into him one of these days.
Yeah.
He lives in another town that's about maybe 40 miles away, and I do take my motorcycle up there every now and then and go by his house to see if he's home. And I hired the guy. And I gave him a chance, and he was the best employee that I ever had.
Mm.
And when I transferred from one rail to another, I took him with me.
Mm.
That's how much I believed in the guy. And he's just one of those proud guys.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I was at the time. Too proud to admit for help or anything like that.
Well, Andrew, if you ever watch this show, Andrew, I just wanted to say to you, you're not alone. There are many people who believe your story, just like we believe Ron's. Mm-hmm. And we would love to not have you on the show. I would just love to chat with you just so you can get these things off your chest like Ron did the first time and talk to somebody who believes. Yeah. Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
was. I
Yeah.
really felt better and I slept better at night.
Oh, good.
Well,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I
Thank you.
just feel so bad for Andrew. I really
I do
do.
I do
too.
too. But I can tell you right now, there's not a day goes by I don't think about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's not a day goes by I don't look at a tree in the backyard of my house and say, and don't think about it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, no, I just wish I can get my mind off it.
Mm.
So I'm just gonna get on my motorcycle and leave this summer and just
Mm.
put a lot of things behind me. And of
There you
course,
go.
this will probably never get there, but I'm gonna put it someplace where it won't affect my life anymore.
Mm. Yeah.
You know, and I know some people want to go up and hunt it, and want to go find it, and want to
Yeah.
prove it. I have no desire whatsoever
Yeah.
that you'll run into something like that again, ever.
Sure.
Thank you for listening to me. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for sharing what you have. And I hope it'll help other people who are kind of have had the same experience as you have had, but they haven't, they don't want to talk to anybody about it. They
Right.
totally get it. I totally get it.
And I
And
excuse the way I look because when I
Mm.
retired, I grew my hair.
Mhm.
I'm going to be a hippie. So
Yeah, I
I've
love
had
it.
short
Well,
hair like Jam. All my life.
well,
I'm growing my hair.
when
Good for you.
winter, yeah, good for you. Because people will write comments when they watch this, they can write comments below it. And, I would hope people would write things to you that would encourage you and help you.
Mhm.
And you'll have the freedom to look at that and read all those comments just like we do.
And
So,
respond because
and
there might
respond
be,
to them.
yeah, there might be some questions.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to me.
Hmm.
I appreciate it. I feel like a load off my shoulders again.
Great.
I was really nervous about both of you and talking to you both about it, and um, I feel better.
Oh, thank you.
I
Thank
feel
you.
relieved, I guess you would say again.
Oh, good.
I wish I can keep this feeling.
You have our contact information. You can reach
Yeah.
out to Jim or I either anytime. We're
Anytime.
always available.
Yep.
I'm planning on going up to Bailey on my
Good.
bike,
Good.
and I will stop by and give my hellos to
Good.
you.
No,
Okay?
Awesome.
I will look forward to meeting you personally and giving you the royal tour of the Sasquatch Outpost.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You bet. You bet.
Thank you
All right.
both. Appreciate
Thank
Thank
it.
you.
you.
Well,
Wow. What a story. What a story. Um, just goes to show again how people's lives are so deeply affected by these experiences.
it really is. My heart goes out to him, and my heart goes out to his friend
Yes.
as well.
Yeah. Yeah. His friend quit a very good job,
Yeah.
because of this experience. And that just tells you he was not playing around. When he quit, he gave up his livelihood. I mean, I don't know what he does now, but I just feel so bad for him that
I know.
he
I do
did that.
too. I do
I don't
too.
blame him a bit. I don't blame him a bit, but I
Yeah.
feel bad that was
The
the
outcome.
the outcome. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully this was an educational experience for a lot of you who are watching. Um,
um,
I know it was for me.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder too, like how many other people that are in railroad engineers have had similar
Absolutely.
experiences and they haven't talked to anybody about them. So if you are someone who works for the railroad or is
Mhm.
retired from the railroad or has had similar experiences to the thing that Ron told us, please reach out to us because we would really like to hear more about these kinds of
Yes,
experiences.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I'm going to guess that, yeah, there are other people. Ron is not alone. Andrew's not alone. You guys who work the railroads, you're out in the middle of nowhere driving on these trains. You have to have seen Sasquatch cross these tracks, I'm sure, in
Yeah.
front of the trains, just like people do on the road. So
Mhm. Yeah.
we're here. We'd love to talk to you and listen to you. And whether or not we ever interview you is not the important thing. We'd love to chat with you. I know Sybilla does her drawings as therapy for many of you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you've had those experiences, please reach out. And thank you so much, guys, for being here with us. We look
Absolutely.
forward to seeing you again.
And we'll be back next time on Sasquatch Beyond the Outpost. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Jim.
Bye-bye, Sybilla.